What's up, everybody? Welcome to Books by Adrian, a very special remote episode of Books by Adrian. And today I have a very special guest, Miss Kesley Smith from Greenleaf Book Group. And I want to make sure that it's Kesley, not Kelsey. I'm sure you probably get that a lot.
Yes, I about 99% of my life is being called Kelsey. I don't mind at this point. But yes, it's Kesley. My parents just decided they wanted to give me a difficult name to live with for the rest of my life.
I remember the first email that you sent me back, you signed it at the bottom, Kesley Smith, and I was like, did she just typo her own name?
I get asked that question a lot if my name was a typo, and I'm like, no, it's real.
I'm sure there's a few people who like straight up tell you, that's not how it's spelled. You know, like they think they know more than you.
Oh yeah, I've had a few professors in college when they're doing roll call at the beginning of the semester. They're like, okay, so let me know if I said your name wrong. And so they'll always say Kelsey. I'll say, oh, it's Kesley, and then they just look at me like I'm trying to mess with them. Yeah. And they're like, okay, Kelsey, and I'm like.
Yeah, my name is Adrian. I can't go a single day of my life without somebody doing their best Rocky impression at me and thinking that no one's done it before. Hey, yo, Adrian. I'm like, yeah, okay. Like,
got it.
Good one. Like, good job.
You're unoriginal.
Yeah. Way to go. So, Miss Kesley Smith, you work for Greenleaf Book Group. Can you tell the folks at home what it is exactly that you do over there?
Yeah, so my official title is Director of Business Development and Corporate Communications. So I do a whole lot of things at Greenleaf. So we have a separate author marketing department that handles each and every book marketing strategy and things like that. I essentially handle all of the company marketing. So that includes social media, newsletters, website, any digital marketing initiatives. I also handle all of the imprints. So we have quite a few of those under our belt as well. Okay. I handle the initial author submission process. My team and I do. So whenever I'm referring to I am referring to my team as a biz dev department. We handle the submission discovery process. So talking to first-time authors about their book, guiding them through the submission process. And we're presenting the submissions to the weekly team meetings. And then any growth initiatives, any brand awareness initiatives, basically anything that brings revenue to the company is under my jurisdiction. So I wear quite a few hats. Love what I do. I'm the kind of person who thrives when I have 18 million plates spinning. So every day is an adventure. We'll say that.
I like it. I like it. And so I'm especially interested in the author application program that you mentioned, like the whole, but we'll get to all that. Sure. So today we're talking about Greenleaf Book Group and hybrid publishing. Yes. Now, I mentioned to you before we started that, we're a little community here on YouTube that we lovingly refer to as AuthorTube. And it's mostly made up of, not entirely, but mostly made up of indie authors and self-published authors and first-time authors who are, doing it all themselves. And I mean all themselves, all the way down to paying for the professional edit to get done. Mm-hmm. And marketing it all ourselves. And the whole sort of point behind our author platforms and these YouTube channels that we do and all the videos that we put out is to build an audience that is like-minded with the author, somebody who likes what the author is putting out, and hopefully building that audience so that when the book does come out, they're waiting for it and they'll buy it. Whereas another indie author, without doing all this stuff, they might put out a book and it might not move at all. So we do that because we're very, very weary of traditional publishing and the way that they do things over there. And not to say that it's always wrong. It might be perfect for a particular author, but others who want more freedom in their creativity or, don't want to get bogged down by any kind of control that a traditional publisher might have, they straight go for the indie route. And I understand that you guys are a hybrid publisher, meaning you fall somewhere in the middle. Can you explain your business model over there at Greenleaf?
Sure. So the the way I explain it and the way that we sit in the industry is that we are what I like to call the best of both worlds when it comes to traditional and self-publishing. So as the author tube, as you called it, you guys know, probably the publishing industry pretty well. So we bring to the table all the best benefits of both traditional and self-publishing while eliminating the biggest downfalls of both. So from the traditional side, we have, the high quality expertise that you would find at a traditional press. We have a good 7, 8, 9 people at Greenleaf who have come from traditional presses. So Hachette, to mention, Penguin, Random House, they're the same. Random House, Hachette, and a few others. So we have
some of the big ones.
Yeah, we have a lot of alumni from traditional houses. So they know everything about the industry, and they've seen kind of where the industry has led, and they really love what our model offers authors. So we bring, the expertise that you would find at any traditional press, but we also bring the high production quality. So we're constantly in the same award categories for design, editorial work, what have you, as your big 5 houses. And when you do a comparison in a bookstore to high quality production, we're always getting complemented by the absolute stellar quality of our jackets and our production quality. And then we also have the distribution power of a traditional press. So we're in all the retailers, major bookstores, Ingram, your Barnes & Nobles, but we're also in retail, airport distribution. So we have a lot of things that, a lot of areas that we distribute to, and then we also do foreign rights and, international shipping and things like that. And then at the same time, we're also very relationship based. So we are a smaller publisher out of Austin, Texas. And so we also empower our authors to retain full rights and ownership to their work. We give them full creative control and a much higher percentage of royalties on the back end. And then we have, an unknown thing about the industry is that there's a lot of media and press that's covered, traditional house publishing that makes it seem like that house supports the author with their marketing. The author actually has to invest in their own marketing. So when people say, oh, why should you invest in your book? Well, I'll tell you 3 reasons why. 1, owning your rights is equal to monetizing your content. So you don't want to be constricted in a contract that doesn't allow you to A, make the money back on your book, or B, restrict you from monetizing your content. So that's where we are a little bit different. And then 2, when people say you shouldn't invest in your book, traditional houses, you're still going to invest. You're going to invest in publicity and marketing, or you can just kind of get it all in one. And also with traditional presses, a lot of people don't know that you don't start making royalties, and that's like 5 to 7% back until that initial advance is paid off. And especially with, the decline in foot traffic to bookstores that we saw with COVID, the traditional houses are really only buying books from people with massive platforms like your Rachel Hollises of the world. And, not every singular person with a book idea is going to have, 3 million followers on Instagram. That's just, that's how all the smallest authors started, like Paulo Coelho. He had, I think, like 50 Twitter followers before he got his first book deal, but then that book really helped amplify his brand. But now it's like, at the traditional presses, they're really only looking for that people who are already massive. And of course, platform is super important to any publisher. It's going to make it a lot easier to sell books if you have an established platform, but it isn't a write-off at a hybrid publisher, because we have an internal branding and platform team to help coordinate, to help build that brand and that thought leadership aspect alongside the book launch. And so, we bring, the high production quality you would find in a traditional press with the distribution, and then also the creative control and everything that you would find at a self-publisher. And, by eliminating the biggest downfalls of both of those.
Yeah. Okay. So there's so much to unpack there. All right. So first off, I'm really surprised to hear that you guys are so involved in the marketing stuff. Because as you said, in most traditional publishing situations, that's not the case. The author is still doing the bulk of their own marketing. And that was actually one of the reasons, again, that I've, at least for one, swerved towards the indie author route, because once I found out, like, well, if they're not even going to help me with the market, if I still have to do that on my own, and that's the biggest challenge as far as I'm concerned, is marketing your thing out to as many people, get as many eyeballs on it, and hopefully entice as many people as possible to buy it. That's the hardest part of the whole process as far as I'm concerned. And so to hear that you guys have that kind of built into your business model is huge, and definitely makes you stand out in my research so far. That's really interesting. The other one was, you mentioned that you have all of this talent from the traditional publishing world, and very experienced in that. They bring that to the table. You also mentioned that you guys are into the idea of the author maintaining creative control and rights. Can you elaborate a little bit more on that particular relationship between Greenleaf and the author and their creative freedom, so to speak? Like, have you guys run into any pitfalls with this, with new authors? Have you had to step in at any point? Is there any kind of like, wiggle room in that particular rule? What's the situation there?
Sure. So something that we do super well, and like I mentioned before, is that we're very collaborative and relationship based. We're also very transparent when it comes to our authors. We are not in the business of just, having someone pay for the services and then the book flopping, because A, that doesn't help us, and B, it definitely doesn't help you. So if we don't see ROI for a book, we're going to be completely transparent and either not take the book on or talk to the author about the things that are restricting them from seeing that ROI. And we will step in and tell them, like, let's say if an author is like, I want to be a New York Times bestseller, but they've got a very small platform, they don't have as much experience. Their book idea is, they have the passion for it, but it's a harder market to be in. We're going to let them know. We're going to set some expectation setting. And so the thing about how we work is, from the very beginning, we're going to be 100% transparent. We're going to, give you all of the details. And at every step of the process, before you're even, getting a proposal, your consultant is going to walk you through the framework strategy of how we're going to do things. We don't operate on like package deals like some other hybrid publishers do. You have to pick so-and-so package. We customize every single strategy for every single author individually. Okay. So every author that comes into Greenleaf, because we offer so many services from book creation all the way to distribution, we work with authors in so many varying phases. So every author project is going to look little bit different, and you can't group them all into the same space, because a fiction author is going to, let's say passion project or a memoir, is going to sit differently in the market than a nonfiction business book that is used for a lead gen tool. And so we take into consideration all of these different variables, along with every specific author goal for their book, to create this custom strategy for them. So everything is very, relationship based. And, we go through every step of the process, and you always have someone who is kind of like your point of contact. You have a publishing liaison, which we call your consultant, that is kind of like your liaison throughout the entire process. You have a project manager that handles all of, the production and design, things like that. You get your own designer. You have your own editor, and you have your own marketing rep. You have your own branding rep, if that's something that you're choosing to go forth with, branding or thought leadership or platform work. And then you have your distribution rep. So you have a point of contact for absolutely everything. And, we are going to, so as per your first question, how do we run into problems with authors who, let's say, they do have the creative control, but us as a publisher, we are looking out for your best interest.
Yeah, you want the best, product.
Exactly.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
We don't expect every author to take every single one of our edits, but we are going to say, this is really going to impact, a number of different things. And the best thing about going into a relationship with a publisher is trusting that they have the expertise and your best interest to make sure that this is something that, we want you to do as well as you want you to do well. It doesn't look good for us if your book doesn't do well. And so we want you to do so well in the market, and, we're going to guide you in all of the right places. And so there have been a few times, where, when we take into consideration submissions and things like that, if a cover we know is not going to be picked up by distributors because they are finicky about what they take on. When it comes to design, they are super, super finicky on what is accepted in retail. And we have a really good relationship with all of our distributors. So if there's a design we know is not going to sell, that's a conversation that we're going to have with an author. And it's going to be a tough conversation, especially if they have done their own artwork, or if they have, if they're really set on a cover design. But the reality of the situation, the reality of the industry we're in is, you have to trust the experts. You are going to have the creative control, and that, like, let's say you're going through the design process. Your designer is going to make 4 or 5 mock-ups for you, and then they're going to take any edits that you have, but they are going to keep in mind what is accepted versus rejected by distributors and kind of guide you towards the right space. So it's, like I said, very collaborative and very, it's a very open communication process. We're not just going to take your book and say, see you at the finish line. It's a very hands-on kind of situation. And the more that you put into the process, the more you're going to get out. So
I really like the idea that you guys tailor the approach to each individual book and or author, because, it's the exact opposite of making the book fit the mold. It's the other way around. You make the mold fit the book. So that's a big deal. I feel like that is another thing that I feel like sets you guys apart, the way that you treat each project as an individual project. You know what I mean?
Things can't be grouped. Every author is going to be in a little bit of a different situation than the author that comes before it. There can be, we've had top keynote speakers for Fortune 500 CEOs who are doing a huge bestseller campaign with a huge push because they're launching this new book to, as a tool for their business, and they are putting everything they have into it. That's going to look a little bit different than, let's say, a fiction author who knows where their audience is, that their audience all lives online, that is going to do a very catered approach to a print on demand campaign. It's just, everything looks a little bit different. And that's why, the whole tailored campaign process and custom strategy is so different for every author, but it's so impactful at the end of the day.
Now, you've mentioned more than a couple times about the investment that the author is putting into the book. Can you talk a little bit about that? Like, what kind of sizable investment are you typically seeing on each project, and what kind of returns are the authors getting back versus the traditional game, for example?
Yeah. So keep in mind, with everything I said, every strategy is going to be customized and tailored to the needs of the authors. So contracts all are different sizes. They vary in sizes depending on service amounts. So a project coming in that's going to need a complete ghostwrite is going to look different than a project coming in that just needs a copy edit. So that is so I think of it in terms of buying a house or house. Your investment is going to look a little bit different the more things that you add to it, the more updates and all of the things that you're doing. So it's kind of hard to, until we do that initial review, scope what the size of the investment is going to be. But everything looks a little bit different. It is going to be, a decent investment, and you're investing in quality, though. That is something that I have, I've made the analogy. When let's say you're building a website, and you're building a website for your company, and your company is 5-star, are you going to hire, someone out of college to do your website that's going to appeal to Fortune 500 CEOs? No, you're going to hire a company that is going to give you the best in-class quality, and you get truly what you pay for. And on the ROI side, you know, we have, and like I said, in the very beginning, if we do not see any ROI potential, we are either going to A, not take the book on, or B, be like, this needs to completely shift if we're going to take this book on. We're very transparent in that regard. Yeah. And we're not going to take somebody's investment if we don't see a foreseeable ROI. That's just not how we do business. It's not ethical. That's just not how we do business. However, at the same time, we are a publisher. We are not a fortune teller. So their books change all the time in what is going to, you know, sell right off the shelves versus not. And a lot of the times we are going to do everything we can to make sure the book is successful. But at the same time, it is going to take a lot of effort from the author. It's not just us. The author has to put in the effort as well. Like I said before, you're gonna get what you put in. So I like to make this analogy a lot. So when you hire a personal trainer, they're going to be kind of your guide through, you know, your new like weight loss or whatever strength building program. You are doing the heavy lifting. You're the one lifting the weights. You're the one, you know, shifting your diet. The more that you put into it, the more you're going to get out of it. So they can do absolutely everything in the gym, but if you're not shifting your lifestyle to accommodate these new changes, if you're not putting in that work as well yourself, then you're not going to see results as someone who's, you know, grinding every day to make sure that they're getting the best results possible. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And, you know, you were saying earlier about things like the book design and everything, the cover design, and it's whoever said don't judge a book by its cover was, you know, they were just talking out of their butts because everybody judges a book by its cover.
We say that in all of our info calls, despite what our mothers told us growing up. We do judge books by their covers.
We absolutely do.
Judged.
We absolutely do. Oh man. So okay. So then, if I'm understanding everything correctly, your you know, Greenleaf Book Group is set up in a fashion where an author can approach you guys with a project in varying stages of development, and you guys can pick up from wherever they're at, and based on how much work you guys have left to do, then that dictates the kind of investment that the author is putting in into the project. Okay.
Nailed it right there. So
now how do you, I mean, and this might come down to what you've already spoken about in terms of quality, but again, you know, we're talking about indie authors who you know, they're like traditional publishers. So I'm really, you know, myself included, as soon as I heard about Greenleaf, my ears perked up a little bit because I want to do it all myself, but I also know that it's an incredible amount of daunting work. And I know that, having not actually done it yet. So I know that I'm going to discover so much work that I didn't know was a part of it. And you know, like I just finished the first draft for what will be my debut novel. And I'm currently like taking a little break from it, letting it simmer a little bit, letting it ferment, so I can come back to it and get the second draft going, get that edit going before I actually decide if I'm going to continue with this self-published route or if I'm going to reach out to folks like yourself. So, you know, the idea of any of the profits going to anyone other than the author is very a very standoffish topic for authors in general. You know, especially ones who haven't actually put a book out yet, and they're hearing how much traditional publishing gives their authors and whatnot. Now, you spoke that the percentage that we get through Greenleaf is much larger than a traditional publisher. How much of a difference are we talking about there? Like, what's the trade-off?
Yeah, so love talking about this because everybody wants to see the ROI come back, and it's much easier to do when you have a model that actually gives you the royalties back. No shade to traditional houses. They do what they do very, very well. Just as the industry has evolved, it's a little bit harder to get noticed by traditional press unless you have a pretty big platform, because a lot of times, even agents now, even if a nonfiction author, let's say, has a decent sized platform, they will even kind of direct them to us and be like, you're going to get more out of it because you can monetize. And since your fundamental goals are being a lead gen for your business, like this is how you're going to monetize and this is how you're going to make money. So speaking of royalties, the general royalty rate for distributed titles, so your bookstores, retailers, things like that, author retains 35% of the cover price. Keep in mind, traditional presses give you 5 to 7%, and that's after the initial advance has been paid off. With ours, it's 35% of the cover price, with 25% going to the retailer, 15% going to the wholesaler, and we take a very, very small percentage of that. And then if you do any direct sales, let's say sales from your website, if you're a keynote speaker, this is huge for our keynote speakers, or speakers in general. So in traditional houses, speakers have a buyback clause where they have to buy a certain number of books back at 50% retail to take to their speaking engagements. With us, we don't have any buyback clauses. So, our model is very attractive to our speakers because when they take their books to speaking events or any direct selling events, they retain 100% of the sales revenue on the books being sold there. And then any online sales, authors retain 70% of net. So it's a much higher royalty percentage on the back end because you do have that to fall back on, and especially if you're doing any direct selling and things like that, that 100% revenue is very attractive to authors as well.
So that is a huge difference. That is a huge leap upwards in percentage-wise, and a lot of the indie authors that I spoke to before this interview, picking their brains, I asked several of them what's the one question that you would ask, and it always came down to royalties. It always came down to the percentage of what you're getting, because if I can get it all, why would I sacrifice any of it? And what I'm getting out of this interview with you is that it's ultimately up to the individual author how much of the process they want on their own shoulders. You know what I mean? So if you are 100% gung-ho about doing it yourself so that you can see it all the way through to the end yourself, then go that route. If all you want to do is write the book and pretty much nothing else other than marketing, then there's traditional publishing. And depending on how much of the in-between you want to mess with, this hybrid model is the way to go. We can come to you with as we said before, a project in various stages of development and take it from there. And so that smaller percentage that you're giving up going through Greenleaf than if you were doing indie is the trade-off is the amount of work that's specifically on your shoulders versus a group of professionals that knows what they're doing.
That's a small part of it. I would also argue that and no, absolutely, self-publishing, it's given authors of any variety, the ability to publish a book. Unfortunately, with that, it's kind of a double-edged sword, because now that anyone can publish a book, that's great, but that also means anyone can publish a book. And so
there is millions of books coming out every day, it feels like. I can't keep up with it.
4,000 books that are published per day, which 800 to 1,000 of those are self-published titles. So trying to cut through that sea of mediocrity
to stand out, to catch the eye,
it is so hard, especially if you have no idea, if you've never published a book before. There are so many things that you have to take. Titling has a lot to do with SEO and how your book is going to rank on Amazon, how your book is going to be found, keywords, cover design, there's so many different attributes that a lot of people don't even think of. So when they put their book on the self-publishing market, they're like, okay, I'm going to publish it, and then I'm going to look to a distributor to distribute it. No, it doesn't work that way, because if the book is already published, then distributors don't want it. It's old news. Even if that book was published that day and then they take it to a distributor, they're like, okay, I want retail distribution. It doesn't work that way. We are pitching books coming out in 8 months from now to our distributors. They want brand new, they want fresh, and they have to approve the cover. We have to make sure that the cover is going to be accepted by retail. And 8 times out of 10, when they're self-published books, the covers are not up to par. And so when they come to us saying, I want this to be distributed, we have to rank it on a much higher scale, because is this going to be accepted? Is this something is there actually things that we can do? Because if it's already self-published, there are minimal things that we can do on the marketing side unless we have the rights to market it and things like that. And so I urge people to double, think through before just hitting the button and self-publishing. Really, really, really look at your options and look at your goals. And if you actually want to, benefit from putting this book out, you want to build brand awareness, you want to, really make a name for yourself as an author. There are so many things that go into making sure, the book is getting into the right people's hands. And so a lot of times when people go to self-publish, they just ultimately, they're missing so many things, and that's to no fault of their own. This is such a hard thing to do on your own, that you want someone alongside you who is showing you the ropes and knows how to do this. Like, being a publisher, we know what to look for. We know what distributors are looking for. We know how to market the book. We can give you all of the tools that you need. Something I like to say a lot is, we will open the door for you. All you got to do is walk in.
That's awesome. Especially, there's the whole idea that 100% of the profit is great and all, but if you only sell a couple hundred copies versus, 70% of it, and you're selling thousands of copies, it's going to make a huge difference. So there's that as well.
Copies for self-published authors are very rare. Like, they'll maybe sell 50 if they're lucky.
Yeah. And that's, doing the legwork with the author platforms and everything, And that's the thing, is there's a lot of success stories out there with this indie author gig. And like I'd like to point to an author tuber on YouTube. Her name is Jenna Moresi. She's got a huge following. She puts videos out every week, sometimes twice a week. She puts out a book every 2 years or so, and she sells by the thousands. She's a bestseller. She's doing great, but she curated that following over like 7 years, of like hard work on YouTube. It didn't come out of nowhere.
Is massive. We also have an internal departmental branding and thought leadership and platform team who helps authors get to, because like I said before, having no platform isn't a complete write-off, but it is going to help you monumentally to build sales and build, community trust and things like that. The larger your platform is, and it's not even that, you can have, let's say, 10,000 followers, but if you don't have an engaged audience and you don't have someone who's willing, to trust you to buy your book, branding and thought leadership and platform, it's not just all about social too. It's about having a strong presence and having a strong community. And we really take that into account. We have, like I said, our branding and thought leadership and platform team that is helping the author alongside their book launch really vamp up their platform. And, that is going to be hugely impactful. And so, like I said, if you're self-publishing your book, and sometimes it's rare to even get a couple hundred sales, if you don't have that platform with it, if you're doing it all on your own, and you want to do it all on your own, you can't expect to sell 500 copies if you've got virtually no platform. It's just how is anyone going to find your book? Yeah.
Who's going to know about it? Who's going to actually they're going to see your name on the cover. They have no idea who you are. They're going to keep moving. In the rare exceptions where, the blurb on the back will snag somebody, or the cover will jump out at somebody, and knowing nothing about the book, you pick it up and you buy it. That's a rare thing that happens. You can't just put all your eggs in that basket, so to speak.
Yeah, definitely.
Now, I've been checking out you guys' podcasts. You guys have a podcast that you put out pretty regularly, and you've been covering a lot of different facets of the author, of the publishing process. And so I was hoping that you'd tell us a little bit about the podcast and any other kind of projects that you guys put out, because having a publisher actually put out a podcast about publishing is, I think, genius and invaluable.
So where I think we differ from a lot of publishers is that we are completely fine knowing that we are not going to be the best fit for everybody. You know, if you are not in the place to invest, you know, we may not be a good fit for you, and we are never going to, you know, try and convince someone. Even if we don't think their book, you know, like I said before, we're going to be transparent. We're never going to be in the business of just, you know, taking on every book and, you know, putting out all these, you know, we are very focused on quality, and we're very focused on making sure our authors get the best they can out of the process, because, you know, a lot of times, being a hybrid, we get confused with a vanity publisher. We are so different from vanity publishers. So I spend a lot of my time on social responding to questions. You know, what makes you different than a vanity? Or like, if you invest in the process, doesn't that make you a vanity? The answer is no. There are so many there are so many things that make us so different from vanity publishers. And I've done an entire remote writing workshop video, which I'll get to later. But the podcast, first and foremost, we aspire to put out tons of information that is accessible to everybody about the publishing industry. Our podcast is geared to help anyone, any writer, any person in the publishing stage who want to publish a book, give them the valuable information. So we cover, you know, we have interviews with our authors. We have interviews with book agents. We have interviews with ghostwriters. So not even if you're in the hybrid publishing lane, we have had like 3 or 4 episodes with famous book agents about how to get a book deal. Like, that is the kind of information that we put out there, because like I said, we know that we're not going to be everybody's cup of tea. Like everybody has a preference, and
every project is going to have their own best way to go about it.
Exactly. And I actually put out a quiz on our website 2 years ago that says publishing options quiz, because there's so many options. I scaled it down to 3: hybrid publishing, self-publishing, traditional publishing. You take a quiz, and it's like a 5 to 10 question quiz. And based on your answers, it'll tell you, you know, from your answers, hybrid publishing looks like your way to go. Traditional publishing looks like your way to go. Self-publishing looks like your way to go. We list how you can, you know, resources to get, you know, a book deal, things like that. If you answer traditional publishing, if you answer self-publishing, we have resources there. And then if you answer hybrid publishing, we'll put our contact information as well as like any other, you know, publishers you can get in contact with. So we're very, you know, I want to come up with the right word here. We're very educational in that way, that we want to provide the best in class resources to people. We also have a blog where we have our editors, our marketers, and our distributors put out content that is so accessible to everybody. So if you're doing the self-publishing space on your own and you decided, you know, you're not like, I'm not in the space I can't invest, but I also know I'm not going to get a traditional deal, or I've been rejected from agents or whatever have you, our blog has so much content that is accessible for any author and any writer in any space. You know, our editorial content is written by our expert editors, and it's submitted to us monthly. And then our marketers will put out a ton of great information about how to build your platform, how to market your book, things to look out for, things like that. We have a whole archive of content. And then a project I started actually in COVID was our remote writing workshop. And this is a IGTV series that I also put out on our YouTube and our other social channels, where I get with our executive editor, Erin Brown. She's actually alumni from a traditional press. And we cover a bunch of different topics. We do it every other Friday. And we'll cover a whole variety of topics, like how, you know, the differences in submission process, traditional versus hybrid, you know, what to look for when submitting to a book agent. So we cover a variety of topics that don't only allude to Greenleaf, that cover a whole span of publishing knowledge that is just public knowledge to people. And then I'll always poll on Instagram, you know, what do you guys want to hear this week? Or if we have comments on any of our posts, it's like, hey, can you cover this? We will cover it. if you like, we had one comment a couple months ago that was like, can you explain, you know, why someone would use a pseudonym, or what, you know, what that process looks like. And Erin did a whole piece on it. I'm interviewing her with questions that are like commonly asked, and she'll cover a whole topic. And this is from our executive editor, who's come from a traditional press. She really knows what she's doing. She's been in this industry for a very long time. And we've also put out content called Ask a Publishing Professional, where I've gone around to essentially every person in every department and ask them a bunch of questions about, you know, marketing your book, distributing your book, how, you know, how to get a bestseller, like what alludes to a bestseller campaign. You know, ask our designers, you know, what's it like designing a book? What do you look out for? Blah, blah, blah. And so there's so much content on our website that is so applicable to any author in any writing stage, no matter if you're going self-publishing, hybrid publishing, or traditional publishing. The content on our page is meant to educate. And that's really how I've hoped to spin our social media as well, to not just to inform about hybrid publishing, sure, but also inspire people to really get out there and see, you know, what option is going to be the best suited for them.
That's beautiful, especially, you know, the idea that regardless of whether the person is going towards Greenleaf or some other route, you're out there to educate. I've been listening to a lot of the podcasts, and a couple of the episodes stood out. I did listen to one on ghostwriters, which I found really interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And then the one that kind of caught me off guard was an episode you guys did with one of your cover designers. And I found his insight to be so almost mathematic, you know, very, very just specific with detail, and ultimately it's a business strategy. You know, like I expected the cover artist to be an artist who's going to talk about his art process and, you know, how he comes up with his ideas. But it was very much about like, look, this is what's going to help this book sell. This is what's going to, you know, bring eyes to this section of the cover and lead you down this way. It was very, very psychological, even. And so I encourage everybody to check out the podcast. I didn't know about the other video projects that you guys have been doing, so I'm going to check those out. But I can definitely speak to the quality of the podcast and how varied the topics are from one episode to the other. I find it really good, very well done.
Yeah, we actually, my team produces the podcast. So my lovely secondhand lady, or right-hand lady, sorry, is secondhand.
I won't tell her you said that.
Right, my right-hand lady, Eleanor, is amazing. She is, I would be nothing without her. She actually produces the podcast with our CEO, Tanya Hall. So Tanya hosts the podcast, and Eleanor comes up with the questions beforehand. And she's really great, and we'll brainstorm, you know, people to be on the podcast who's going to benefit from listening to the podcast. And, you know, we'll come up with ideas, and our CEO will be like, I don't think this is as relevant to our entire audience. So if it's something that's more catered towards hybrid publishing, a lot of times we won't even do it, because we want everybody in the publishing space to benefit from this video. And, you know, on, you know, via our remote writing workshops too, those are all on our Instagram page, all on our YouTube page. And, you know, like I said, we take comments from people, from anyone who are just like, okay, can you cover this? And if it's not long enough to put into an entire remote writing workshop, I will just directly send a DM to alluding to that exact question. Or if it's something that we can cover on the remote writing workshop, we'll do a whole segment on it. So we are really here to, you know, answer your questions and be in that educational space. Because like I said, you know, a lot of people don't know who we are or what we do. And so we're here to inform, but we're also here to just give you the best advice possible.
That's awesome. So I know that you're pressed for time. We're kind of, you know, getting down to the wire here. So I wanted to hit you with one more question, and then we'll start to wind it down. You mentioned, and this is going back to the investment on the author's part. You mentioned that if the author is not in a place to invest, you know, X amount or whatever into the project, that, you know, maybe you guys are not the right fit. I was wondering if you guys had any kind of payment options, how exactly that works. If it's one lump sum that the author has to put up front, is there some sort of loan setup that can be done? Like what are the options in that area?
So we
For
don't
broke
do,
people like me.
so we don't do loans. However, we work based off installments. So everything is broken down monthly. So it's not one upfront payment of however much money. It is basically, we will essentially bill being on work being done. So let's say someone is in what we call manuscript development. So that's where we are helping them actually create their manuscript. We're not going to bill for like production, blah, 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 until that section is done. And however long it takes them, to write the book, they're going to, be in that space. And then with COVID, our consultants are the ones who, drop the proposals and everything like that. And you will see a fully fleshed out proposal strategy before you even decide to work with us. So you'll see everything, all of the costs on the front end, all of the royalties on the back end. You'll see everything before you make a decision. So if you want to like go over with lawyers, if you want to evaluate with other publishers, we are confident in the fact that, we give such a well thought out strategy that if you're doing a comparison, we're confident that you'll see the value in what we do. So with COVID, we know that some people have been hit pretty hard by the pandemic. And so our goal is to be 100% respectful of the author's budget while making sure we're putting every hour and every dollar towards things that are going to have the biggest impact. So before, while your consultant is working on your strategy, they will discuss with you what your budget looks like. And if it's, let's say, if your budget is something just far outside what we can do to even start, we'll work with you. Or do you want to get started on this? Do you want to get started on that? So it's a lower cost to start in, but you will have to eventually pay that money. But if you want to just like invest in some of the services to get you started, or something that they've done is because people have been hit pretty hard due to COVID, they'll either extend the installment payments to like 12, 14 months to make them smaller. And so we'll work with the author on something that is going to work with them.
Okay. So I like to wrap these up with these last two questions.
Sure.
The first being, what is a question that you get asked all the time that we didn't cover today? Something that that a lot of people are always wondering about. Anything like that come to mind?
Yeah. So how many books, or do you need an agent to submit? How many books are submitted to you, and how many do you accept? So the first being, you do not need an agent to submit to Greenleaf. You can submit directly. Submitting your manuscript does not mean that you will be accepted. It does not guarantee you an acceptance from Greenleaf. Our submission discovery process starts with you submitting a manuscript or even an idea, and you don't have to have a full manuscript to submit. If you just have an idea or a book proposal, or if you just have a couple sample chapters at the moment, you can submit that to us. And then we will go into what we call submission discovery, where every head of department will look at everything from all angles and decide if this is something that we want to explore further versus, versus not. And we have a lot of books submitted to us per month. We get a ton of submissions in, but we review every single submission that comes in. Humans do. So my team does it. And we don't have an AI process. That's been something that's asked, like, do you have an automatic kind of like yes or no based on like AI? No. We review everything ourselves. And we published about 10% of the books that are submitted to us. So like I said, we are very, very high on quality over quantity. So like I alluded to earlier, people think that if you invest in the process, that makes you automatically a vanity publisher. Absolutely not. Vanity publishers publish whatever comes through their doors with, no regard for quality. We have a very comprehensive submission process where we look at everything and we want to give the author the best opportunity for success. And we do that so that, we're not taking in books that we know are not going to sell. If we don't see that ROI, that's not going to be something that we are taking on. Or for example, we'll have this has happened a couple times where someone wants to go into a distributor and they're already killing it on Amazon, and we don't think they're going to have the success that they're having in retail. So we'll have that conversation. We'll be like, yeah, we can try for distribution, but we don't want to, have you invest that money when we don't think it's going to come into return. You're doing great at what you're already doing. We would just say do X, Y, Z, and we'll give kind of that advice. When we have that, submission discovery feedback, we'll come to the author and be like, you know what, next time though, like when you're coming from the beginning before you self-publish, come to us first, and we'll take everything from the top.
That's awesome. All right. And lastly, what is something that folks don't typically ask you about and you wish that they would? Something you wish people were more interested in that you knew about?
That's interesting.
It's the flip side of the previous question.
Something you wish people would ask. Honestly, I don't know, because I have so many conversations a week and people really do their research.
Judging by the number of podcast episodes you guys have, like, yeah, it seems like there's always something to talk about.
Yeah, and you know what? Instead of I'm gonna answer with a piece of advice that I think is a little bit better.
Okay.
Do your research. I cannot stress that enough. And there are so many different publishing options. Like I said, we have a quiz that you can take that kind of puts you in whatever direction you want to go. And I recommend talking to publishers, talking to people, and because I'm a big person on, I'm gonna use the term energy. I pick up on people's energy really well. And so I need to have an in-person conversation with someone, or like if I'm hiring or if I'm doing something like that, I need to have that interaction. And I think writers should do the same things with publishers. If you get on the phone with someone and something seems off, go somewhere else, because you don't want your book to end up somewhere where you're going to end up regretting it. And unfortunately, I hear a lot of the time where, people come in and they've had such a bad experience because
horror stories.
Unfortunately, we're in the industry where there are some dirty publishers out there, and there are, and we're the good guys, and we like to, we like to put people on the right path after they've had a bad experience. So please, 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 I do not want anybody to get taken advantage of or do anything that's going to cause them regret. Do your research before you do anything. Like before you do anything that's going to, impact you, you're going to do a ton of research on it. So do your research, talk to a bunch of publishers, evaluate different proposals. Don't just put all your eggs in one basket, and talk to a publisher. Just talk to them first, get the information, ask the questions you want to ask. And a lot of the time, when I speak to authors and when my team speaks to authors, they will say, a large part of why I wanted to submit to you guys was the fact that you guys were so great on the phone. As the preliminary phone calls went, you answered all of my questions. You didn't because I'm not going to sit here and be like, yeah, your book's going to be a bestseller. If anyone's telling you that, they're lying. We cannot.
Yeah, you don't know that.
We cannot predict bestseller campaigns. We cannot predict any bestsellers. If a publisher is telling you that they can guarantee a bestseller, they're lying to you. Just no. And so I wish more people would do their research and really evaluate their options and really come to the publisher with the questions you want to ask. Because sorry, my dog wants to say hi.
Hey, buddy.
If they're not going to answer your questions, or if there are some things that we can't answer in the very beginning process, like how much to the dollar is this going to cost me? Well, I don't know until I see your manuscript, kind of thing. But if you are talking to a publisher and that gut feeling is off, and you're not getting the information, or just it seems fishy, or you're researching it online and it's on we did a whole remote writing workshop that I recommend everybody check out on how to spot out scammers. And we also we did a whole podcast episode on it as well, like how to spot out publishing scams. We did like publishing myths and stuff like that we're really giving the information to people that there are some dirty publishers out there, and to please, please, please do your research. Do your research before you decide to commit to anyone, because that's what's going to guarantee you the best success, is really going to the things with your eyes open. Take off the rose-colored glasses and really, really answer, get the questions that are going to matter to you.
That's awesome. Thank you so very much for being here. I know that we're pressed for time. You have another appointment to get to. So I think that's a great note to go out on. I want to remind everybody, if it's your first time here, please like, comment, subscribe, all that stuff. You've been on YouTube, you know what to do. I want to also remind everybody about the Flash Fiction Contest on my channel. The deadline is in 2 days on the 15th, and I'm looking for the most emotional story so that we can score it and teach you guys about how music helps with storytelling. It's going to be a whole thing next month. All right. It's going to be fun. I hope that you come back and check it out. Kesley Smith, thank you so very much. I wish that we had more time with you. There's so many more questions I want to ask, so maybe we can do it again someday.
Hey, I'm down to do a part 2. Let's do it.
Sounds great. Okay, I'll collect more questions from everybody and we'll do a part 2.
Awesome.
Everybody, thanks again for being here. We're going to go out, and Ms. Kesley Smith, thank you very much. Have a great day.
Thank you for having me. It was a blast.
This was great. Thank you.